Welcome back to the Student Hub Live for Primary Studies. Now, this session is about associate lecturers or tutors, and the title for the session is Starting Where Students Are At. So, I thought it would be a good idea to see where you're all at home. HJ.
Yes, we've been having a lot of chat that we may be able to get some help with. We're slightly worried about, it seems some people are saying that they're quite far ahead already, but the modules haven't even started, and we may be a bit worried about falling behind and what to do if that happens as well. So maybe we could get some help in this section. I think we got some stuff to cover as well that I think we'll talk about. That we'll go over these areas about what to do if we fall behind and what the tutor's there for and what they can do as well to help.
Okay, excellent. Yes, some people have been very diligent and have been getting ahead of finding their assessment, etc., which is great. It's a brilliant way to start the module. But don't worry, when the module starts, you're going to be introduced to your tutor, you're going to get lots of learning events, so things like online tutorials and face-to-face tutorials maybe, and all sorts of ways of interacting with other students using the forums, etc. So there's plenty to come. But at the moment, I appreciate you've got your module material and it's very exciting. So Jill, welcome to this session. And now you're an associate lecturer or tutor, as many people call them, on the primary modules, and you support students overcome their barriers in their learning and are the friendly guide throughout their learning journey for the particular presentation that a student's on. But we've got a lot of new students out here today who are very keen to get ahead and being very conscientious and diligent. And I wondered if you could tell us about what you would tell them where they're at now. So some of the things people have been saying, I'm ahead already, I'm not sure I've been allocated a tutor because I haven't got a contact detail yet. What would you tell these students right here, right now?
Well, I think the main thing is to remember that when the module starts, everything is explained for them, so they will be assigned a tutor. Because students are still being enrolled and the administration is still being done, tutors haven't quite been assigned yet, so it's not that we've forgotten any students. I know every year we do have some students who go, have I been forgotten, where's my tutor? Try not to worry about that. And it's just generally for now, what we as tutors advise students to do is just become comfortable with the material. So look at the module materials that you've got, navigate around the Open University website, practice being online, practice looking, can you find the library link, can you navigate your way around the student homepage, rather than get too far down the content of the study material that you've got. One of the things that we find is some students do want to get ahead. They've got valid reasons, perhaps they've got weddings planned, they've got holidays planned, and that's good. It's good to look ahead, but don't get to that point where you're anxious, feeling that you've fallen behind. Look at, when you go online, each module is structured where you've got a weekly plan. You don't have to stick religiously to that weekly plan, but it's there as a guide to help you pace yourself as you're going along. And I think the other thing for especially new students, it's important to remember that different students are in different situations. So you have some students who are working full-time, in which case they haven't got a lot of study time. You have other students who are working perhaps part-time, or they want to do full-time studying, which means they've got all day to study. So it looks like they can get further ahead. And I think it's just important for students not to compare themselves with others, but to just look at that weekly plan once they get onto the module website and just follow their own pace. That's the best thing we can recommend for them.
Excellent advice. Now, you have listed some of the barriers to learning, which I love here, because I recognise this in so many students. Things like confidence, experience and expectations. Now, those seem like quite positive words, so how can they be barriers then? And what do you do as a tutor to help students overcome some of them?
I think sometimes what can happen is that students come in with a set expectation. For some of them, they haven't studied at this level before, and they may not get the mark that they want for their very first TMA. And they panic and think, oh, obviously degree level study isn't for me, and they give up really easily. And what we would advise students say is don't do that. It's quite common not to get what you perhaps hoped for. It's not it's not a merit of who you are or what your potential is. It's just that you're still getting used to the study, the module materials, the website, working with a tutor. So it's very much, I don't mean have low expectations, but it's more be flexible, be patient with yourself, see yourself as this is a learning journey. If everyone was going to get 80, 90% the first time, it's almost then why study?
Pointless, isn't it?
Exactly.
You're already perfect.
Exactly. So it's finding your own benchmark and just remembering that that's one snapshot, and the idea is that you're going to keep building and building and building on your skills. You'll get feedback. Usually the first assignment is it's a test assignment to get you settled into it. It doesn't matter particularly your grade, it matters more what you do with it afterwards, that you build on that feedback that you've been given.
Now, we've got an assessment boot camp for all students, and that is on the 9th of October. So we'll be looking in particular at how your assessment works and explaining how at level 1 it doesn't count for much in terms of your overall qualification, and we'll talk through the weightings of various assignments. So it's all set up so that you're learning and progressing. But this idea, Jill, about learning and progressing, I mean, it's something that seems very obvious in a sort of higher education setting. But equally, some students can lose a sense of that in this quest to think, I didn't get whatever grade it was. And often those are heuristics, they're like picked out of the air. You know, I got 75, well, that's not good enough. And actually, that's an amazing score, for example. So what can you say about managing students' expectations and about this whole issue of confidence and being mindful that this is a learning journey?
I think it's really important to just keep reinforcing to students, not comparing themselves with other students. What they have to remember is that some students might have studied before, or they might have studied at different levels. There's a couple of the modules that I work on where, on E209, for example, we look at each of the different core subjects. We look at English, maths, science. Usually you'll find, even in schools, you have somebody who's very good at maths, somebody who's very good at science, somebody who's very good at English, and you play against each other's strengths. So what we try and do is get students to work together, to reflect together, but not to compare numbers. It's not the mark that's important. And I think when we give our feedback, we try and explain to students, we try and say what was really good, and we highlight that and say, keep doing that. But we also try saying, look, if you just tweak this bit, that'll help you keep moving up. And it's that idea of please look at your feedback. The feedback's not a judgment on you. It's just a snapshot of that assignment, and it's giving you a signpost of how you can keep building and moving forward. I've been studying for a while myself. You always get that one assignment that you think you've done well on and you haven't. You've maybe misunderstood something. And it's important just to take some time, reflect on it, not panic, and think, OK, I've learnt from that. Let's move on.
Now, you've raised two really good points I want to pick on here. One is the importance of feedback and this dialogue with your associate lecturer, and on reading that feedback and taking on board, no matter how hard it is. And I want to hear your advice for that. But the second one is this idea about answering the question, because I've seen some incredible essays. Amazing essays, but they're not about the question that is asked, and therefore they can't be awarded a grade that they would deserve had the question been an open question, for example. So what would you advise students do in terms of both looking at what the question is that's set and also then taking on board the feedback from their tutor when they receive their feedback after the submission?
You're quite right. In terms of the question, a lot of students can be disappointed and they'll say, well, I worked really hard at that. Unfortunately, we don't give marks for effort. I wish we could, otherwise all our students would do really, really well. And it tends to be where they've maybe not quite got the question. What I recommend my students do is to go through with highlighter pens, pick out what the action words are, pick out what's been asked. If you're not sure, talk about it on your tutor group forum, share it with other students. It's also easy when you've written an essay plan and you sit down and start writing. I've done this myself. You start writing something and you read something and you think, oh, that's really good, and you go off on a tangent. And for some reason, when we've spent a lot of time writing something, we don't like to then delete it or put it to one side, and we stubbornly carry on and we go off the question. So it's really important to go back. When you've finished, allow enough time to edit and proofread. Students tend to do the research first, and some do write right until the deadline and submit it. It's better if you can finish a couple of days beforehand, take the dog for a walk, have a night out and enjoy yourself, relax, come back at it with fresh eyes and reread it. Check the question and think to yourself, have I actually answered that question? Is the evidence there? Does it reflect the module material? Does it show that I've studied this module and this section? And if not, allow yourself enough time and be brave enough to take a paragraph out and just change it slightly. If, like me, you really dislike deleting your own work, what I do is I say to students, set up a Word document, take it out and put it there. So it's not quite the same as recycling it and deleting it. You've still got it, and it might come in as revision notes, but it's not in your assignment that's going to put you off task.
I do that. I call it over matter, and then I put it somewhere and save it, and then feel like it's not deleted.
Yeah.
But equally, it's not going to add any marks, so it's fairly pointless having it in there.
Exactly.
So then, Jill, what advice would you give students right now in terms of getting set up for studies? Because we're going to cover things like assessment in some of our boot camps a bit later. And in fact, we've got some essay writing workshops, so we can work on those essays with you and you can work on them with other students. But right now, students are getting set up and they're sort of looking at their time planners, looking at when their tutorials come up. What advice do you give them to get set up for their study, particularly within this discipline, primary studies?
I think once they get online and once they've got their weekly planner, it's a good idea to look ahead. Have you got any family holidays booked in? Have a look. Sometimes when we have our weekly planner, it's built in for nation delivery. Now, sometimes if you perhaps got a placement and you're looking at doing observations, obviously in Scotland or in Wales, in Ireland, if you're in an international school, they have different timetables. So some students will panic and say, well, I can't do this observation because it's half term. And if you speak with your tutor, they'll advise you to maybe flip one of the weeks around. So the weekly planner's there as your guide and your structure, but there is a little bit of flexibility. It's always worth working a week ahead just in case children are always ill or something happens just before a deadline, so it gives you that little bit of safety net. But the best thing they can be doing at the moment is really getting themselves organised. Have you got a study space? Have you got the children where they know not to interrupt you when it's your study time? Or have you got a quiet point where you can be more organised? Students like to go out and get lots of post-its and highlighters. That makes you feel a real student when you do.
It's important.
Get the
Let's
equipment.
face it.
It
You
feels
do it too.
Yes.
I do.
You get all your pens, your stationery. It makes you feel part of it. I must admit, when I'm studying, I have an OU hoodie I like to put on. It makes me feel like I've got into that role that I'm taking on. So
No, lots of students. In fact, you can get the OU hoodies, can't you?
Yeah.
And I see highlighting is already popping up in the chat again. We love stationery at the Student Hub Live because most of the people who come to the Student Hub Live are very organised, so they would like stationery. It has to be said. Okay, so I wanted to ask you finally about some of the things that you've been doing, because you've been working on some initiatives about getting students sort of realigned with their study. So you were working as an academic progress tutor. When students experience difficulties, you were sort of there on hand to help them get back on track. And I wonder if you can share some of the things that you recommend for all students so that they don't get in a position, if they can help it. And you've mentioned some of these things in terms of the time planner and finding a space. But what are some of the other areas, in particular people, that you could maybe go to?
Well, I think what we've noticed is a lot of students, with the academic progress tutor, it was students who wanted to do 2 modules perhaps. Right. But it's really important that you contact your tutor. If you feel you're falling behind, they can give you advice, they can help you with that. We're not there to judge you. We're not there to say, oh, you're failing at something. It's more, oh, there's a life circumstance happened or you've fallen behind. Here's some suggestions of how you can catch that time up or what you can do. You can chat with other students on your tutor group forum. I can't recommend that enough. It's really helpful if you can attend some of the tutorials as well, the face-to-face tutorials. I always find, I know some new students particularly get very anxious about coming to tutorials. I'm not quite sure if they think it's going to be a formal lecture. When I do mine, it's very informal. It's more about getting you in through the door. Students will then share what works for them. It might not work for you, but you've got a variety of different things. You've also got student support. So there's lots of avenues that you can go to. The best advice is, the only silly question really is the question that you don't ask. Nobody's ever going to say, don't ask that question. Yeah. We're not telepathic. We'd really just want you to get in touch with us. Let us know if it's a niggle for you, then we want to make sure that we're solving that early enough and it doesn't become a bigger problem. It's very easy to put your head in the sand and think, I'll deal with it later, and it just gets bigger and bigger and bigger. And what we don't want is students to feel that they need to drop out, that they've fallen too far behind, that there's no recourse for them. So we don't want to lose students that way.
Absolutely. And it's very exciting. I can't wait till I get my students. Have you had any of yours yet?
Not yet, not yet, but I'm watching the chatter on the forums and the qualification forums and can see there's a lot of eager students. So it's always an exciting time of the year when you get, it's like getting your new class really at school.
I know. And then I'm going to highlight low. Absolutely. Well, Jill, thank you so much for coming and talking to us today about the importance of connecting with your tutors and some of your advice as well in terms of keeping on track and really learning from feedback and reading the question and making sure that you've answered it. So I think that's all really, really valuable advice for all our students out there. It's something that we all need to continually remember as part of our studies.
Brilliant, thank you.
No, thank you. HJ, any outstanding questions that we haven't covered? I think we've covered most of them as they've been coming through.
We have covered most. I've got some 2 good points that came up in the chat that you might be able to help us with. Jacqueline says with reading, because there can be a lot of material in some of these courses, that she struggles with looking at the material and then recalling it as well, or bringing up important points that she needs. Is there anything that you would recommend on that front?
Highlighters, as we've mentioned before, but also keeping into small chunks. That works really well. Try not, and don't, if you've got to that point where you're reading it and actually it's just not going in, stop. Because if it's not going in, there's no point forcing it. It's usually better, that's the point when your brain's saying, go for a walk, take a break. You can try different things. You can try, what works for me is reading out loud. Or just putting keywords down. And I think if any of the students can do any of the activities or work on what is good note making. Because note making, we can either write notes and write everything out in longhand to help learn it, or we can write notes for more shorthand, just bullet points. And it just depends what it is you're wanting it for. If I'm wanting to try and remember it, I'll write it out longhand. If I'm wanting to plan an essay, I'll just make the odd bullet points till I've got a basic structure. But the tutors will share ideas as you start to move towards that. All I would say is, as you're just getting used to things now, try not to worry too much. It's more just read it all, be familiar with it, read it a number of times, just keep coming back to it. It will drip feed in, but you can overwhelm yourself if you try doing too much right at the start.
Yeah, no, absolutely. And we've had conversations before about reading out loud to our pets, haven't we?
Yes.
Which is a very useful idea. And Jacqueline, you can come to our note-making session, which is on the 26th. So we're going to be looking at some specific skills for your studies, like reading and note-taking. So that might be really helpful. That's from 10 till 12 on Tuesday next week. So make sure you check that out.
I think we're also interested in, we've got a lot of students doing E103 and E102 together. So what would your tips be for doing 2 modules at once?
Well, fortunately, that's what I did last year. It was a pilot called the Academic Progress Tutor, and I was supporting over 500 students who were doing E102 and E103 together, and I tutor both as well, so it's quite useful. What you need to do right at the start is look at when the deadlines are and make a good plan, because sometimes there are, unfortunately, even with the best will in the world, you will sometimes have TMAs for both modules due on the same day. So it's important to work out how you're going to study. Are you going to do it in chunks? So you might, for example, do 1 chapter or 1 study topic of 1 module, and then you might, the following week, decide I'm going to work on the next module. Or depending on when your TMA deadlines are, you might prioritise 1 particular module, get it down, and then focus on the next one. So it really, you've got to experiment and find a way that works for you. But plan ahead. That's the key thing, is plan ahead.
And those TMAs are regular, about 1 a month, and it does you best to keep up if you can without getting extensions, because as soon as you get out of kilter, you can come to the end, and that's not flexible.
It is. I mean, we do have extensions if you are ill, if there's an unforeseen circumstance. Obviously, we try to be as flexible as we can, but we try and advise students, particularly at the early parts of the module, when the assignments are a little bit lighter, because what we're trying to do by the end of level 1, particularly if you've done 2 modules at the same time, it means next year you're starting level 2 study. So as for me, when I'm looking at students that are doing 2 modules, I'm also trying to put in the odd skill set. I'm wanting them to build up and progress ready for the level 2 study, so that, because we want them to succeed. We don't want to just get them to level 1 and not go any further. So our intention all the time is to keep supporting, drip feeding all the way along.
Brilliant. Well, thank you very much, Jill, for that. And do join us at that bootcamp session, which is open for all students on the 26th. We do have other Student Hub Live events as well, and you can check those out on the website and see what we've got. You're welcome to come to any of the sessions that we've got lined up over the next few weeks.